Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Colby Rebel Show. I am your host, Colby Rebel, where my goal is to make that connection or answer that question. However, tonight we have a very, very special guest in house with us as we really take the dark side of investigating a little bit further. So, you know this guest already, everybody. If you were here for Vino and Voices and we had our weekly episode, you will know this person very near and dear to me. She is absolutely one of my best friends in the whole world, but she's also an incredible psychic medium, teacher, author, and the absolutely famous Jennifer Schaefer. So, hello, Jennifer.
Hey. Hi, Colby. Thank you.
Hi there. How are you?
I am doing fabulous. How are you doing?
I am doing great, and I am super, super excited to have you on tonight. As you know, we have something very, very exciting this weekend. That is the Parapod Festival, and it is finally here. So, very excited that you and I get to do that presentation together where we're going to talk about intuitive investigation and what that is. And I thought, well, what a great way to kick off the weekend and to have you on the show right here, right now, and start diving in deep with it.
Well, thank you for having me, Colby. And I'm so excited about this weekend. I love what Tony Sweet has put together. I met him through your podcast that you had over there. It's wonderful. I'm looking forward to it this weekend with you.
Thank you. Thank you. And so, I know that you and I have actually taught this before, and I've really had the privilege of working with your whole group and everything that you've put together. I know you're very, very passionate about having a voice for the victims and really being able to kind of bring justice to the forefront. And so I wanted to kind of know what got you into intuitive investigation initially.
It's kind of one of those things that for me, we always say that, but it was something that kept happening. I had a case, and then it kind of led to another case, and then it kind of led to another case, and then it put me on TV, and then it started unfolding that way, which was it was heartbreaking what I saw, and every time that I would look into something or help someone, it made me feel better, and made them feel better, and I just felt there was a great need for it.
Yeah.
And it was just that I'm like, this is my tithing. They call it tithing Mormon. I'm not Mormon anymore, but I was raised Mormon, so my tithing it's my pro bono work. It's the way I give back. It's the way we give back.
Got it. Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, although there's so much effort and energy that goes into and we don't have immediate resolution, it is nice, when that resolution does come about and we do find that our work has really facilitated a lead or a connection. I know you recently, I don't know if you're able to speak of it, but I do know recently you said something you had worked on, that they really had this big breakthrough and some resolution. So is that something you can talk about on air yet?
Yeah, I can. I can actually. So, police detective reached out to my assistant Tony, and that's usually how it works. So, the I can't know anything before I go into it, and so she handles everything and then puts it on my schedule. So I spoke to this person. This was a year ago, and this is what happens with cases. They end up, we work on them a couple years ago, and then things start happening afterwards that ends up, it just takes a long time before it gets resolved or before it gets, if you think about people that end up in jail, for instance, it might take years before there's a hearing, even.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
this takes forever. But in this case, it was a cold case back in 1990, and this woman went missing. And so I felt that with what I saw, with what was coming in when I gave this information to him, and he didn't have any way of saying yes or no. This is usually how it works when I work with FBI agents, for instance, I will I will get information to them and there's no feedback until later on. But with this particular piece, it was so eerie how everything we said, and my academy worked on it too. And so with the Intuitive Investigations Academy that I have, what we can I explain a little bit about that just real fast?
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
So you and I have taught we taught a course, and that actually helped with getting a lot of people to form this group. And this particular group, they would get, so I gave them this case, we gave them this case, and they do this work on their own. And then they come back and we're able to take the main, we basically try to create an algorithm. So let's just say there's 200 people in this, in my academy. And let's say that 90% of them, or 90 of the intuitives, 90% of the intuitives, excuse me, end up saying the same thing. Like, end up saying that this person was near water, or this person was near a bank, this person was in Wisconsin or Washington, whatever it is. We take all those hits and then we give it to the investigators or the families or law enforcement. And it was just fascinating. It was so eerie. So when by the time 2 years later, I spoke to this police detective, he said, he goes, the police chief was so blown away by it that they researched me because I'm sure that I wasn't, um, necessarily involved. I get researched a lot. But all the hits that we said ended up unfolding over the next 2 years, down to, I said to him, I said, I don't believe that the person that killed her is even still alive. And sure enough, they started putting things together, and and they actually are very close to getting this person, somebody that's connected to this person. I said that there was somebody that was in his later years that wanted to get something off his chest, and they were going to make a connection to this person that would eventually give who killed this other person. It was just really fascinating to get that feedback from the police chief and from the police detective, and then
Yeah.
give it back to the academy and what a great job they did. I mean, it is fascinating. It's fascinating. I found, they all are like, wait a second, you saw them in the class, they're like, we got the same answers or similar answers, and everybody works separately.
That's the idea too, is that, I think some people are very practical and logical and say, well, wait a second, how could you know something or tune in? And but the idea is that we can, right? Because we do have that all-knowing self and we all have that intuition. And when we lean into that intuition and really trust where we're setting the intention within the investigation, we could
Okay.
certainly come up with this grid, right? This grid idea. And I do find that it's very, very valuable. I think the other thing too that is so fascinating, again, with the way you work and why we do a lot together, is the amount of integrity that you have doing this. There are a lot of people, if they go into this, they will say things haphazardly or irresponsibly. And I know
Absolutely.
both of us put a lot of integrity into how are we delivering it? What are we saying? How are we really putting that information together as well?
Absolutely. And just starting off, we have never offered information on any cases.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, what? Like, one of the biggest complaints that law enforcement has is that they'll get 1,000 phone calls for a missing person, and that 800 of them say they're psychic mediums, and
Yeah.
that they know where this person is. And they're like, there's no way we can do this. That's why that's why I formed an academy. Like, more eyes on the unseen and the seen is better than just me, because that's what really what it got boiled down to. I'm like, this is a lot to handle, and it's a lot, like you said, with the delivery of the messages. You were
Yeah.
It is, I'll never forget, if I may, a family that came into my office, and it was a pro bono case.
Mhm.
They all are, but this dad was just sitting there like this. And I looked at him and I said, listen, I'm sorry that your son's not here, but I can't, it's challenging for me to get information when you're blocking it, when you're saying like this. And he's like, and the wife was like, I'm so sorry, Jennifer. I'm like, I'm doing this out of you know, out of my heart. I'm like, I'm not doing this for any other reason. And he just looked at me and he's just like, you know what? I'm sorry. Because we were taken for thousands of dollars. And these psychics said that they would go find him in Mexico. They said he was in Mexico. They came back and filmed it and said that, I'm sorry, I think that your son's body parts were sold. So I'm sorry if I'm not completely like overwhelmed about seeing you today. And I just was like, oh my God, oh my God.
Yeah.
How could that happen? How could
Yeah.
someone do that to anyone?
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
I just,
Absolutely.
and I was just that stuck with that was 8 years ago. That has never left my mind. And that's what we're up against. That, you and I have made sure that we make this professional.
Yeah.
We do everything we can to make it, you know, to make other people know that they can tap into their own intuition. We don't say, oh, it's just us. We're the only ones
Yeah.
that can do it. We're
Mhm.
like, please, there's enough. There's enough clients to go around. There's enough. Like when the world would look like a better place if everybody knew what they were capable of. But
Yeah.
that's
Absolutely.
it was just, we are doing everything we can to make sure that we have protocols. You don't offer information on a case. You have to be connected to it somehow. So somebody needs to either be a family member or a police officer that works on the case. You have to have a connection. In
Yeah.
my opinion, that's how I work. Other people might not work like that. I know there's some that don't, but that's just how I work, you
Yes.
know,
Yes.
and that helps.
And I think too, so when we're, teaching or helping people tap into their own intuitive investigation side of themselves, some of the things we say is to, feel into the energy of the situation. What are you feeling? That clairsentience as we know it to be. But
Right.
I think when students have an opportunity to kind of feel and lean into what is the energy around this, because again, a missing persons case does not necessarily mean a homicide, right? It doesn't necessarily mean a crime at all. Especially if someone chooses to create their own disappearance. But it
Right.
is interesting to see what happened. And then we also talk about remote viewing.
Mhm.
So, in remote viewing is a really important aspect of this. So, for the listeners that are kind of tuning in and wanting to learn more, why don't you explain the concept of remote viewing, what that is, what someone would do, if you don't mind?
So remote viewing is where there's a couple ways for remote viewing. There's a very, very well, how would I say, for instance, Joyce Jackson. She's a fabulous medium that I work with, and she does remote viewing where she gets like they give her a certain point, they give her a certain time, and they give her numbers, and then she goes off of that. The way that I do remote viewing and the way that I work, with my FBI agents, they'll call me up and they'll say, Jennifer, we're going to go do this bust. And I will be able to remote view by looking into what they're going to do or what that place looks like. And I'll tell them, okay, so I'm getting that you guys are going to, just as an example, you guys are going to go in the back. And they're like, yes. And I'm like, I'm getting that you have to walk up 2 steps. Yes. I'm getting that you need to go through. And I went through this whole process. Like, how do you know this stuff? I'm like, that's because you remote view. People do it, they just don't even know that they are doing it. How many times has somebody described where you're on the phone and you're talking to a girlfriend and she's describing this guy and you're like, you could totally see who he is, or you could totally see where they're at. I just know that I'm being given the information versus coming up with the information, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And the idea for anyone is just to imagine. So let's say for anyone out there and you want to practice this, look at something you lost recently, right? Or maybe one of your friends lost something. And, they say, oh, I lost my ring. I can't find it. So just again, put the intention on where could that ring be? Where's the energy? And just see if it starts to put you. If you see a dresser drawer, if you see it behind a bed, if you see it in a car, if you see it left on a sink, like what are those images that pop up? And that could really go, okay, wait a second, that's remote viewing.
And we could take it a step further too, where you can ask. What does this person want for their birthday?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But again, I think too, it is disheartening because when we do this work or when we are helping again, it's for the best intentions, but there's not always a positive outcome and there's not always an immediate outcome. The best we can hope for, I believe, the best is closure. And not always do we get that closure, but we do strive for it. And the idea is hope, right, Jennifer? Because the hope is even though we don't have closure today or tomorrow, we may have it next year, a few years down the road.
The hope is justice. And there's
Yeah.
something that's very interesting about time because when early on when I started doing this work 10 years ago, time showed up like something that I felt like was going to happen tomorrow didn't happen for 7 years.
Yeah.
And if you have any judgment towards whatever you're looking at, like for instance, you can feel the parents that they're just like, well, of course this person's going to get caught soon when they are still out there 10 years later. You know what I mean? And it's a very interesting um way to get information, and then you still have to be, you're not predicting, but you're also giving like, hey, I feel like this is going to happen, but I can't gauge where, when they're going to have when justice is going to take. It
Yeah.
takes those years,
Yes,
like
absolutely.
the Bakersfield 3, for instance, that I worked on. That, and same with the academy, that is taken a long time. And
Yes.
what I said 5 years ago ended up happening,
Mhm.
over the next 5 years, and that's kind of nutty too, and people are still trying to wrap their heads around it, but
Yeah.
that's kind of what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you able to keep like all your information and all your cases so that you can kind of go back and say, okay, let me do a little check in here. Let's see where we are with this, that sort of thing?
Um, I actually Tony does keep it because I make everybody record it. So like when the Bakersfield three moms were in my office, they had actually a film crew. And that has happened several times actually. I make sure everybody records it because I don't remember the things that come through me. I remember
Mhm.
associated to the cases that I work on. But on cold cases, we usually have the information because
Right.
and she keeps it. But, and then we're able to go back on it. But I usually even if I have to look at a case again, even if it's like 2 or 3 years out from the first time, I like to do it cold. I don't want
Right.
to know what I've said before because then if it comes back that I'm saying the same things that I said before, it's good, hopefully with good information. But that's usually it's better that way for me.
Right. Yes, absolutely. What is your favorite part about volunteering and offering your gifts and services towards intuitive investigation?
My favorite part is having them be excited, having them understand their own gifts. That's what's really exciting. Putting that academy together, some of the women that I wanted to be in it, they're just like, there's no way I can do this. There's no way I'm going to get information. Every single one of them got information,
Yeah.
and it just comes, somebody might have felt it. Like you said, the Claires, they all do it. Everybody perceives information differently and receives it differently. And
Yeah.
so I think that was my favorite part.
Well, I think what's interesting too is that, I find when we have cases or a situation where there's an unknown factor of the absolute conclusion. But it's interesting because even in a reading, I'll be giving something or saying something, and the family member will be, that's been our gut intuition all along as well. So, again, not knowing any of the facts, it's what we are leaning into and what we are getting is also in alignment with the gut feelings of the people closest to the victim.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So a lot of times they know, but they don't want it
Mhm.
to be true. And so
Yes.
even when I get information and I'm looking at a parent who really is hoping that their son's alive. There was a certain case where I'm just like, I felt him on the other side, but always say, I never, you don't work on a case like that and say the person's dead. You just don't do that, especially if you don't have a body, especially if you don't have proof. But in this case, I really felt this person gone. I said, well, and this person was telling me, tell my mom. And I said, how am I going to say that? And her son said, tell her that she had a dream 2 nights ago and I showed her what happened. And when I said that, I didn't have to say it, but I said, hey, your son is showing me that he was in your dream state 2 nights ago and that he told you what happened. And she just started bawling. She knew exactly what I was talking about. I didn't say it. He showed me the way. And a lot of times they do show you. And just because we know information doesn't mean we say it. You know, I asked her all the time, do I say that now? And they're like, no, you'll have an opportunity later. That's
Yeah.
not a big thing. You don't tell a mother if her daughter's missing the things that you think are happening or the things that you feel happened. You don't say that. It's again, it goes back to protocols and what we try to do,
Yes.
you know.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Because there is, there is an amount of practical evidence that is also needed, right? If we're going to go into things, that we have to have a way to somehow have that validation or proving as well, rather than just as kind of random ideas that we're deciding to put together, right?
And that's it. I always told you, like, we are not solving cases. We are help assisting. It takes it takes teams after teams after teams, and
Yes.
that's just to get it to a certain point. And then you have the
Yeah.
judiciary system that takes it from there, which is also a crapshoot. And
Yeah.
so it is definitely, I don't know. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yes, yes, yes. And I know that we have, a lot of good that we can be doing and committing. And, it's just a matter of leaning into it and leaning into what we can do to help. I know psychometry is also a big part. So, for anyone out there, psychometry is when you feel a physical item of another person and you are able to get the feelings, the energy around it, the impressions around it.
Right.
Jennifer, I know you love psychometry in your investigations,
Yes.
and I know that they really seem to help you. If you don't mind just telling the listeners a little bit more about how that psychometry does help you.
Sure. I had a situation in Manhattan Beach years and years and years ago where a girl went missing. And whenever that is a live case that's so close, especially close to home, I'm like, oh my gosh. I always have the parents or law enforcement bring me something of the victim or of the person that goes missing. And so in this particular case, I was brought a sweater, and I think a teddy bear or something like that. And by filling into that or just holding on to it, it's almost like a confirmation of what you're getting anyway, but there's a stronger link. And when you're dealing with a case that where a girl is missing or where somebody was murdered, you want to have something that's of theirs. It just, whether you need it or not, is not the point. It just creates a stronger link to you and the victim or to you and the person that's gone. That's gone.
Yeah. It does help because I feel like also it hones in on the intention. It hones in on,
Absolutely.
that specific person rather than picking up randomly what we could pick up around us, right? Because there's a lot to it. I know this is a hard question without preparation, but can you think of, your favorite case, something you really just
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
okay, why don't you share a story about your favorite case?
Okay. Ah, it was a call that came in. I was actually carpooling, and they were actually looking in to this place, and it was for one of the most wanted people. I think the third most wanted. And this person was basically a pimp for children, and just that alone says a lot. But and so when they called me up, they're like, I gave them what I was looking at. I told them to what because I can see like a heat sensor. That's what I feel. When that comes in, it's like a heat sensor. So the whole building will go dark and I could see where a person is. And so I told them, and they're just like, oh my gosh, I don't know. if we go in there, they're going to have a bigger head start. If they're not there, and I'm like, they're there. You've got to go, and they're there. And again, I didn't do this. I didn't, I wasn't there to go in. I was just doing this by the phone, but they went in and got this fugitive and took him off the streets. I just remember sitting there going, oh my gosh, it hits so close to home having children that was probably one of my favorite cases. I have quite a few, but that was very, I don't know, it meant a lot to me, you know.
Must have been so rewarding, right? To just
It
say, and
just
also to trust yourself, like to be adamant of, hey, please, because again, if you were just like, oh, well, it is what it is, that they may have missed that opportunity. But because that feeling was so strong and that impulse was strong, that but it's great to kind of, anyone like that we get off the streets is certainly an improvement for
yeah,
sure,
yeah,
right?
I just felt
Yeah.
this, but I was in the car with 2 kids in the back seat, in their little,
Yeah.
and, there's never a convenient time for a case, and I learned that a long time ago. You just have
Yeah.
to go in, and you will be guided if it's like that, and I felt guided. Still nerve-wracking. There's never a time where it's not nerve-wracking, you
Yeah,
know?
absolutely. Yeah, of course it is. And then I think one of the biggest things that, sometimes we worry about is being wrong, right? Because there's a lot of trust and energy, but and there are things that could be wrong. I mean, that we can't bat 100.
No, and this is the only profession where they expect you to bat 1,000, you know?
Yes,
And
yes.
the difference, and this is what I explained to them, and I've explained this to people that I've worked with, in the FBI and to our own investigations team, is that it's interpretation. So they're never wrong what comes through, but it's interpretation. It's how you look
Yeah.
at the information. Like if you start putting it together, you're probably going to be wrong. But if you just take the information for how it comes to you, that's what they need, So for instance,
Yes.
on one of the cases, I'm like, I get this cousin. There's something about a cousin. I don't know how this cousin fits in it. Well, they know exactly
Mhm.
how this cousin fits in it. So you just give it and you let it go. You don't sit there and have it fester in your head. You just write it out and let them put all the clues together, even if it doesn't make sense at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that is important to not let the investigator get in the way.
Right. Right. So I'll tell you about what one of the cases real fast about
Yes.
interpretation. So they were going to bust this person to get another person that they were sort of surveillancing for about a year and a half. And I kept seeing these 2 bulldogs. And I'm like, there's something big with 2 bulldogs. Like, Jennifer, there's no bulldogs. We've been surveilling them for a long time. There's no bulldogs. I'm like, you know how I work. So this could be a name. So if there's a name dealing with bulldogs, you got to do something. If there's a street that's bulldogs, you got to figure this out because it's super, super important. They went in there and they went upstairs to his room, and guess what was there? It was a bedspread with 2 bulldogs on the bedspread. How
Well,
cool is that, right?
yeah.
I'm
Yes.
like, "That's what she's talking about," But it's just those
Yeah.
little things that you could again, I thought it
Putting
was
it together. Mhm.
physical bulldogs. You could sit there and go, "No, that's too," but over time, you realize you have no idea what that means, but it's gonna be
Yes.
important. If it comes
Yeah.
through, that's where you have to trust yourself and have it, just say what you get. What
And
we say.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely say it. Yes, for sure. And again, so I'm looking forward to this weekend where we get to be live on stage, helping others understand the fundamentals of intuitive investigation and what it means. And I think we have a few little treats in store for them as well, which I think will be very fun and exciting. So I am really looking forward to it because educating about intuitive investigation is really important because, like you said, we do have a lot of light workers out there, that are doing this or putting it out there, and and maybe they are coming from a great place, but without the proper training, we may be lacking the integrity, the compassion, the empathy, which is also extremely, extremely important when we do an investigation.
Absolutely.
So I know that for this Parapod Festival, I do believe that this is going to be extremely fascinating and wonderful.
So everybody, it's going to be interactive. You guys get to help learn some things, which is going to
Yes,
just come out and see what you're made of. There's no,
exactly.
it's not going to be like, oh, you have the wrong answer, or you have like everything. You'll see how it works, which was
Yeah.
pretty fascinating.
Extremely fascinating. Yes. Now, I know other than intuitive investigation, you are doing a lot to help people just in general, right? I know you deliver a lot of messages at your events. Do you have anything coming up that you would like to just share with our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I love this little place called Uncorked. They have the Uncorked wine shop that's in Manhattan Beach, and they also have one in Hermosa Beach. I do live events there every month, so which is really, really fun. And so we call it Wine and Spirits. You're going to come, have a little bit of wine, and I get to talk to you and see what spirits come in. And it's not just about that either. It's also about, you know, you can ask a question about your life or about your kids, or I mean, Colby and I both do that. We're kind of, I don't know, we're spiritual strategists, consultants. We help others. That's kind of why we're in this. But the more and more that we talk to people, and I think you would agree, the more people are awake and they want to understand more about
Yes.
it, how they
Abs-
how they get this information. Because a lot of times, by the time somebody comes to me, I always say I never tell someone to get a divorce unless they're in like harm's way, where something can be hurt,
Mhm.
hurt. I give them enough information for them to make their own decision. But
Yes.
like I know, by the time they come to us, they already have that decision made. They
Yes.
just want confirmation,
Absolutely.
right?
They do. They do. That's right. If you don't mind, tell our listeners where they can find you, your website, Instagram, your favorite hotspot social media places.
Probably Instagram, Jennifer M. Schaefer, Shaffer, and then Facebook as well. And my website is jenniferschaefer.com, JenniferSchaffr.com.
Love it. Well, I had so much fun talking with you and giving the listeners a little bit of insight on intuitive investigation, what it means, and again, your role, and just the fact that you are, just not a participant, but an advocate. You are driving this, creating this agency that I think is so imperative to helping people come together, work together, good versus bad, right? it's it,
Yeah.
and I am a big believer that the good guys win. I really am. I know sometimes we fall back a little, but I'm a big believer in that. And I love how much your time and your energy that you put into it, your love, your commitment to it, and how you're constantly striving to make this a better world for everyone.
We all are. Sorry, that was my little puppy dog that came in. But thank you so much for having me. And I can't wait to see you in 2 days.
I- I'll see you Saturday. Lots of love to you.
Love to you too.
Bye, Jennifer.
Bye, sweetheart.